All right, come on in, team. Hopefully you're refueled, refreshed, and ready to roll as we get into the afternoon sessions here at Intersekt 2024. For those of you I'm meeting for the first time, my name is Simon Thompson. I'm editor of startupdaily.net and your host in stage one today and tomorrow. You having a good time so far? Yeah? Did you enjoy getting down on the digital highway in Scott's Lamborghini a little bit earlier? For those of you who are in that session? No. Okay, fine. We have another special guest here I'll be introducing in just a moment. But before we do, I do want to thank the sponsors for making Intersekt possible. Of course, the presenting partner, the Victorian State Government, our gold sponsor, BC Payments, our silver sponsors, MasterCard and Visa, our bronze sponsor, Australian Payments Plus, and our digital sponsors, Xero and iGo. And a big thank you to all of our other sponsors. Oh my gosh, I just remembered I forgot to get the ice cream. Who's had the Messina? Is there a preference for flavour? Oh, Rihan's here. I think he had all four. Is that right? Full bowl? Yep, okay. Don't forget, if you head over to where the meeting rooms and the exhibition space is, there is a Messina cart there, thanks to Manuva. And thanks very much again to Firemark for lunch. Well, let's get cracking because I'm keen to hear what the Honourable Angus Taylor has to say. He's been in Parliament since 2013 and amongst his recent hits you could read his speeches around the Reserve Bank Reforms Bill of 2023, the Treasury Laws Amendment Reserve Bank Reforms Bill, the suspension of standing orders, that's another one of my personal favourites, but of course paid parental leave. And he is very active on so many fronts. He was, of course, back in the previous coalition government, the Minister for Law Enforcement and Cyber Security, the Assistant Minister for Cities and Digital Transformation, Minister for Energy, Cabinet Minister from 2018 to 2022, Energy, Emissions, Industry. He's done a lot. He is now the Shadow Treasurer. I'm pretty sure he's hoping to step out from behind the shadows at the next election. Please welcome to the stage the Honourable Angus Taylor.
Thanks, Simon, and great to be here, and I want to thank FinTech Australia for putting together this important conference. To my colleagues in the room, my broader parliamentary colleagues, great to see you as well. It's a real pleasure to address for the second time this conference, and I want to thank all of you for the work you do, which is enormously important to this country. Whether you're running your business or running a team, whether you are part of a small business or working within a much larger one, whether you're within government, a regulator, or indeed in the private sector, what you are doing is enormously important. It is easy to forget how important the financial services sector is to our economy, and of course we've seen enormous success in this sector, both domestically and as a service to others around the world, and the reforms that we saw through multiple decades across both sides of politics with Howard, Costello, Hawke and Keating set this sector up for success. Indeed, it's easy to forget that it pays $37 billion of tax a year, which is an extraordinary number, and alongside the mining sector, it is one of the great contributors to government coffers. Some might argue it's too big a contributor, but it is a big contributor, and that means our schools, our hospitals, our roads, the services, essential services we rely on are funded by the financial services sector, and that is enormously important to all Australians. It does go beyond that, of course, because one of the things I like to highlight is that our prosperity as a nation, our prosperity as individuals, as households and businesses relies on an effective financial services sector. It's a sector which is the enabler of dreams and prosperity. And for aspirational Australians, and I consider myself to be one of those, and I'm sure many others in the room do as well, you can't get there without an effective financial services sector, whether it's buying a home, starting a business, saving to start a family. The work this sector does at its core is about supporting Australians to realise their dreams. And we should never lose sight of that. I think in the business sector, it's been easy in recent years to forget the importance of the customer. But I think it's noble to serve a customer well and to deliver them something special, which they love. And in this sector, that means delivering them an opportunity to realise their dreams. My goal is to make sure the next generation of financial services leaders in this country are able to deliver what the last generation has been able to deliver. And there's no question that we're in an era now of transformation in our economy. Globally, we're seeing advanced economies struggling as they emerged from the pandemic to deal with the increasing demands on public finances at a time when money is no longer free. We've been through an era where money was near free or free, and as it has become expensive again, I think that's been a very big change. We've had a generation of politicians trained on the value of an announceable, and I think it's true that many are struggling to realise that government spending isn't a silver bullet when you have supply-side shocks, and that's what we've seen in our economy in recent times. Domestically, we are struggling more in Australia than in other countries in the world with that problem, and that was highlighted in the national accounts data that came out in the last month. We've got a public sector which is growing at 7 times the rate of the economy. 7 times the rate of the overall economy, our public sector. Labour productivity has dropped by 6.3% in the last couple of years. And we are alone around the world at having seen those outcomes. Job creation in the last 2 years has been primarily driven by government or government-funded sectors, with job vacancies stubbornly above their long-term average, and it's good to see strong demand for labour in the economy. But when one of the drivers of it is a collapse in labour productivity, then prosperity takes a hit, and that is exactly what's happened. With a collapse in disposable incomes, a typical mortgage-paying family in New South Wales has lost $35,000 versus where they were just a couple of years ago. And if you look at our small business sector, which is 98% of all businesses and half of private sector employment, they've been hit hard by rate rises. 50% of small business finance is secured, of course, against the family home. And they're being bombarded with new costs, higher energy bills, higher taxes, more red and green tape. As Brand Black, the head of the BCA, pointed out last night at the annual Business Council dinner, we're seeing capital and investment leaving Australia. And whilst we mightn't see the implications of that directly, it is felt in reality. The lesson from all of this is simple. We cannot take for granted the prosperity that we've seen as a nation for many decades. If we take it for granted, the chances are it will disappear on us. And so it's incredibly important that we re-find our capacity to provide that platform for prosperity into the future. And from our point of view, that means getting back to basics, getting back to the things that have created the prosperity in the past, obviously in a different context to what it was during the 80s and the 90s. I do think as a nation we are faced with a crossroad now, and that is central to our thinking. The distinction between the two alternatives we have in front of us is clear. Down one path lies greater government control and regulation. Down the other, a future fuelled by private innovation and economic freedom. And that, of course, is the pathway we believe in, and we intend to take Australia down that road when we get back into government next. And our plan is for that to be soon, as was just pointed out a moment ago. The government's alternative, their road, we see as defined by rejecting the private sector. The Future Made in Australia policy, for instance, is about creating bureaucracies, not businesses. We want businesses, not bureaucracies. Their approach puts government at the heart of investment decisions. We want to see the private sector at the heart of investment decisions. And it puts well-intentioned concepts, and they are well-intentioned, but in reality they will deliver little economic dividend and a big fiscal price tag at a time when we don't need that. And in fact, that fiscal price tag will only drive inflation and the degradation in people's standard of living that we've seen in the last couple of years. Now, an economy where the jobs market and GDP is entirely propped up by the public sector is not a healthy economy. It's as simple as that. It's not a pathway to prosperity, because eventually the snake will eat its own tail. And that's why we have taken strong positions on critical issues in recent months, because we think this is a pathway that's a pathway to poverty, not prosperity. As I say, Labor's policies may be well-meaning, but intentions don't drive economic growth. And in your sector, I see this distinction in harsh terms. Now, Labor might not intend to harm business, but its priorities do. And to give you a sense of that, we've seen no progress on regulation of digital assets in 2 years, as the world passes us by and investment shifts offshore. No progress on regulation of digital assets. No progress on open banking in 2 years, as Australian consumers miss out on a smoother consumer experience and greater competition, and streamlining of business processes, which we know innovations like CDR are crucial to achieving. Proposed changes to the sophisticated investor test we've seen, with no understanding of its impact on start-up financing, and a proposed unindexed wealth tax on unrealised capital gains, with no understanding of its impact on small businesses, self-managed super fund structures and their role in start-up financing. Even where we see notional commitments from the government on the potential of AI, big data and quantum, all of which we strongly support as enablers of innovation and prosperity, we see no energy policy to deliver the affordable, reliable baseload energy that these technologies crucially require. How can Australia lead in innovation without ensuring the foundation that is so necessary with that baseload energy? You cannot power the future on rhetoric alone. And without action, these promises we've seen remain hollow, killing off the pathway to productivity and prosperity we want to see. By contrast, our goal is to get the economy back on track and back to basics. And that'll require us not just to pick up the work we initiated in government, much of which we still think is as relevant today as it was back then, but to accelerate it with a broader economic agenda that supports Australian businesses and Australian consumers. That means a high productivity, low inflation economy. That will require the private sector to be absolutely central to the outcome, and you simply can't get there without that. We can't have an economy with strong social services without a strong private sector to support it. So what does that mean in practice? We'll cut red tape by progressing the financial services regulatory grid to drive a genuine financial services deregulation and better regulation agenda. We'll accelerate the implementation of the Levy Review and regulate digital assets to ensure that we have that light touch regulatory framework so that our digital asset industry can flourish. We'll get the consumer data right back on track and on target, boosting competition and empowering Australian consumers with more choice, better services and more streamlined processes. We'll drive investment through simpler, lower, fairer taxes, and we've already announced that we'd make the instant asset write-off permanent for small businesses as a down payment on that agenda. And we'll have Paul Fletcher as a dedicated Minister for the Digital Economy to drive this agenda forward. We'll have more to say in each of those areas and others in the lead up to the election, but our commitment is clear. We'll deliver the reforms Australia needs to get back on track. We can't do that alone though, and none of that works without investment in financial investment and in investment of human capital, of your abilities and energies and skills to achieve the outcomes we want to achieve. And so working with you we see as absolutely central to achieving the outcomes we want to. achieve. An innovative financial services sector that's well regulated, not over-regulated, but well regulated, is essential to addressing the challenges that Australians and Australia is facing right now. Each and every one of you in the room and each and every one of us in the Parliament have a role to play. It'll require talent, initiative, business nous, and your commitment to deliver the great business experiences to your customers, not just here in Australia, but around the world. I am deeply committed to making that possible, and I look forward to working with all of you in the coming months and years to make that outcome possible. Thank you again for having me here today, Simon.